Day 1, February 14th, Sarah, Emma, Lisa and Jennifer hired me for a 5-day winter ascent. All experienced hikers, but none had tackled serious altitude in these conditions. The weather looked promising. Clear skies, moderate winds, should have been routine. We made good time to base camp. The women were in high spirits, joking about Valentine's Day on a frozen mountain. Sarah, the group leader, kept everyone organised. Emma documented everything with her camera. Lisa, quiet but observant, noticed things the others missed. Jennifer, the youngest, had endless energy despite the thin air. Around midnight, Lisa woke me. She'd heard something circling our camp. Footsteps too heavy for any animal that should be up here. I checked the perimeter and found tracks in the snow. Large, but wrong somehow. The stride was too long, the impressions too deep. I told her it was probably wind displacement in the snow. Day 2, February 15th. Emma's missing. We broke camp at dawn. The ascent was brutal. Visibility dropped to 20 feet in sudden whiteout conditions. When the snow cleared 2 hours later, Emma was gone. No calls for help, no sign of struggle. Just absent. Sarah's keeping everyone calm, but I can see the fear creeping in. We backtracked, found her ice axe embedded in a snowbank 50 yards from where we'd been walking. No other trace. The snow around it was disturbed in patterns I've never seen. Spirals like something had been dancing. Jennifer wanted to continue up. Said Emma probably found shelter and we'd reunite at the next waypoint. I should have insisted we descend immediately. The tracks are following us now, staying just beyond visual range, but always there, always watching. Day 3, February 16th. Jennifer screamed herself awake at 3 a.m. She swore something had been touching her face, breathing on her neck. The rest of us were unconscious, deeper sleep than normal at altitude. When I checked her sleeping bag, the outer layer was covered in frost patterns that looked almost like handprints. At sunrise, we found Jennifer's gear scattered in a perfect circle around our camp. Her backpack contents arranged with meticulous precision. Compass pointing north, water bottles in descending size order, energy bars stacked like an altar. Jennifer herself was 30 feet up the mountain face, frozen solid, arms spread wide against the rock. Her eyes were open, staring down at us. The rope that should have been impossible to climb was still coiled at the base of the cliff. Sarah's losing it. Lisa's gone silent. I'm trying to radio for emergency extraction, but the equipment keeps malfunctioning. Every time I key the mic, all that comes through is breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing that definitely isn't human. Day 4, February 17th. Lisa didn't make it through the night. I was on watch when the aurora started. Strange for this latitude, but beautiful. Green curtains of light dancing across the sky. Sarah woke up to see it, and we both stood there, mesmerised. When we looked back at the tent, Lisa's sleeping bag was empty. We found her an hour later, seated cross-legged in a clearing we'd never seen before, surrounded by trees that definitely hadn't been there when we made camp. Her skin was blue-white, but she was smiling. Actually, smiling. On the way back, I saw it clearly for the first time. Tall as 3 men, but wrong in every proportion. Arms too long, fingers that split into too many joints. It moved like smoke given form, gliding over the snow without disturbing it. When it turned to look at me, I understood why the others went willingly. Its eyes aren't eyes. They're windows into something vast, hungry and patient. Looking into them feels like falling into deep water, but the water is made of longing. You want to give yourself to it. You want to become part of whatever ancient thing it serves. Only Sarah's scream snapped me out of the trance. Day 5, February 18th. Sarah's gone. I'm alone. I woke up to find her walking away from camp, still in her sleeping bag, shuffling through the snow like a sleepwalker. I called after her, but she never turned around. just kept walking toward the summit, where something tall and dark was waiting with arms spread wide. The thing looked at me over her head as she approached. I felt that pull again, that sweet promise of surrender. It would be so easy to follow, so warm despite the cold, so peaceful, but I ran instead. I've been running for hours down the mountain, leaving everything behind. The creature isn't following me anymore. I think it has what it came for. No, that's wrong. I don't think it came for anything. I think it's always been here, waiting in the high places where the air is thin and people's judgment gets cloudy, waiting for someone to climb high enough to find it. My radio finally works, but nobody's answering. The rescue frequency is just static now. Even the emergency beacon isn't transmitting. It's like the mountain has swallowed all our signals, along with my team. I can see lights in the valley below, but they seem impossibly far away. The snow is getting deeper with each step, and my legs feel like concrete. I don't think I'm going to make it down. If someone finds this journal, don't come looking for the others. They're part of the mountain now, part of whatever lives in the spaces between snow and sky. The cold is making me sleepy. My hands are cramping, hard to write. Behind me, footsteps in the snow. Getting closer. It followed me after all. I understand now. There were never supposed to be any survivors. We were never meant to come down from this mountain. We were an offering, delivered right to its door. The footsteps have stopped. It's waiting for me to turn around. I won't give it the satisfaction of seeing my fear. But God help me, I want to look. I want to see those beautiful, terrible eyes one more time. I wanted to do something meaningful for my 35th birthday, something that would mark the transition from my reckless 20s and early 30s into whatever comes next. My friends thought I was crazy for choosing a solo winter trek through Denali, but they didn't understand. After the divorce, after losing the house, after watching my father waste away in that hospital bed, I needed to prove I could still do something difficult, something that mattered. The first 3 days were exactly what I'd hoped for. Brutal cold that cleared my head, endless white landscapes that put my problems into perspective, and the deep satisfaction of relying entirely on my own preparation and skill. I made good time despite the heavy pack, and my gear performed flawlessly. The isolation felt like a gift rather than a burden. For the first time in months, I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes or replaying conversations with lawyers and doctors. On the 4th morning, my actual birthday, I woke to find my tent surrounded by a perfect circle of dead ravens. Not frozen, dead. Their eyes had been removed with surgical precision, leaving behind hollow sockets that seemed to stare at nothing. The strange part wasn't finding them there. It was realizing I hadn't heard them die. I'm a light sleeper in the wilderness, trained to wake at the slightest unusual sound. Whatever killed 17 birds just outside my tent had done it in complete silence. I photographed the scene and broke camp quickly, telling myself it was probably some kind of disease outbreak or territorial dispute I didn't understand. But as I hiked that day, I kept seeing movements in my peripheral vision. Dark shapes that vanished the moment I turned to look directly at them. The feeling of being watched grew stronger with each mile, until I found myself constantly checking over my shoulder and scanning the tree line for threats that never materialized. By evening, the sensation had become unbearable. I made camp earlier than planned, choosing a clearing with good visibility in all directions. As I set up my tent, I noticed my hands were shaking, and not from the cold. I'd done dozens of solo trips without feeling this level of anxiety. Something fundamental had changed in the last 24 hours. Something that my rational mind couldn't identify, but my instincts were screaming about. The attacks began just after midnight. Not on me, but on my equipment. I woke to the sound of fabric tearing and stumbled outside to find long gashes in my tent. My sleeping bag, my pack. Clean cuts that went through multiple layers of high-tech materials like they were tissue paper. My water bottles had been punctured in intricate patterns, creating small fountains that were already freezing into ice sculptures. Most disturbing was my emergency beacon, which had been disassembled with the precision of a watchmaker and reassembled incorrectly, its internal components arranged in geometric patterns that served no functional purpose. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the ruins of my camp, headlamp scanning the darkness, emergency knife in my hand. Nothing approached the circle of light, but I could hear it moving out there. Footsteps that didn't match any animal I knew, sometimes bipedal, sometimes not, always maintaining the same distance from my position. Occasionally, I caught glimpses of reflection, eyes or teeth or something metallic, but never enough to understand what I was dealing with. Dawn brought no relief. My damaged gear was barely functional, and I was at least 40 miles from the nearest road. I had enough emergency supplies to survive another day, maybe 2 if I was careful, but not enough to make it out if whatever was stalking me continued its campaign of sabotage. I tried to convince myself that I was dealing with a bear or wolf, something that could be understood and avoided, but the evidence contradicted every natural explanation I could think of. The day's hike became a nightmare of constant vigilance. The creature stayed close now, sometimes visible as a dark shape moving parallel to my path through the trees. It was large, definitely larger than a human, but it moved with an unnatural fluidity that reminded me more of smoke or liquid than any living thing. When it wanted to be seen, it appeared clearly at the edge of my vision. When it wanted to hide, it vanished so completely that I began to doubt my own perceptions. Twice I found my own footprints from earlier in the day, arranged in perfect spirals, in clearings I hadn't walked through. The snow around these formations was undisturbed except for my tracks, as if something had lifted and repositioned my footprints without leaving any trace of its own presence. I photographed everything, desperate to maintain some record of events that increasingly felt like hallucinations brought on by altitude and stress. As afternoon faded to evening, I realized I wasn't going to make it out alive. My water was gone, my shelter was destroyed, and my stalker was growing bolder with each passing hour. I could see it now without turning my head, a tall shadow that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It had been playing with me, I understood, allowing me to maintain the illusion that escape was possible while systematically destroying my chances of survival. The temperature was dropping fast and I had maybe an hour of daylight left. I found a sheltered spot against a large boulder and decided to write down what had happened, in case someone eventually found my body and wondered what had gone wrong. My hands are cramping from the cold and my pen keeps freezing, but I need to finish this while I still can. The shadow is standing about 30 feet away now, watching me write. It hasn't moved in the last 10 minutes, but I can feel its attention like a physical weight. I think it's been waiting for me to understand something, to reach some conclusion that will allow whatever this is to reach its natural end. I wanted to do something special for my birthday, something that would mark a transition into whatever comes next. I think I succeeded, just not in the way I planned. Whatever comes next is walking toward me now, and I'm no longer afraid. The cold is making everything feel distant and peaceful, like falling asleep after a very long day. Happy birthday to me. Day 1, June 20th. Claire surprised me with this camping trip for our 3rd anniversary. She'd found this remote spot in the Cascade Mountains, hours from the nearest town. Just us and nature, she said, that beautiful smile lighting up her face. I love how she still gets excited about simple things. After 3 years together, she still amazes me with her spontaneity and joy. The campsite is perfect, nestled in a valley, surrounded by towering pines, with a crystal clear stream running nearby. We spent the afternoon setting up our tent and exploring the area. Claire collected wildflowers while I gathered firewood. Everything felt peaceful, almost sacred. As we watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, Claire curled up against me and whispered that this was exactly what we both needed. Tonight we cooked over the open fire and shared stories we'd somehow never told each other before. Claire talked about her childhood dreams of becoming a forest ranger, how she still feels called to wild places. I told her about the recurring nightmares I'd been having lately, dark dreams full of hunger and violence that I couldn't quite remember upon waking. She laughed and said the fresh mountain air would cure whatever was troubling my sleep. I hope she's right. There's something about this place that feels different, though I can't put my finger on what. The silence here is too complete, like the forest is holding its breath. Day 2, June 21st. Something's wrong with me. I woke up this morning with dirt under my fingernails and the taste of copper in my mouth. My clothes were muddy, and there were scratches on my arms that I don't remember getting. And I had to stay several steps behind her. Every time she bent over to examine a flower or photograph something interesting, I felt an overwhelming urge to grab her, to bite the exposed skin of her neck. My hands started shaking so badly that I had to clench them into fists and shove them deep in my pockets. Claire keeps asking if I'm feeling okay. I've been telling her it's just altitude adjustment, but we're barely 3,000 feet above sea level. The truth is, I don't feel like myself anymore. There's something else living in my head, something that whispers suggestions I don't want to hear. Day 3, June 22nd. I blacked out last night. The last thing I remember is sitting by the fire with Claire, watching her braid wildflowers into a crown. When I came to this morning, I was standing in the forest about a quarter mile from camp, completely naked and covered in blood that wasn't mine. My mouth was full of something I don't want to identify, and my fingernails had grown into sharp, curved claws that looked nothing like human nails. I stumbled back to camp in a panic, expecting to find Claire hurt or worse, but she was still asleep in our tent, peaceful and unharmed. The relief was overwhelming, but it was mixed with a terrible disappointment that I couldn't understand. Part of me had been hoping to find her gone, to discover that whatever I'd done in the darkness had solved the growing hunger inside me. I spent the day trying to act normal while fighting waves of nausea and strange cravings. Claire suggested we hike back to the car and head home a day early, saying I looked pale and feverish. I agreed immediately, desperate to get away from this place before something worse happened. But as we started breaking down camp, the voice in my head grew louder, more insistent. It told me that leaving would solve nothing, that the hunger would follow me wherever I went, that Claire would eventually discover what I was becoming, and then I'd have to hurt her anyway to keep the secret. It whispered that it would be kinder to end things here, in this beautiful place where she'd been so happy. I managed to resist until evening, but barely. My hands kept reaching for her throat while she wasn't looking. I caught myself standing over her while she slept, my fingers inches from her face. The rational part of my mind was screaming in horror, but it was getting smaller and weaker with each passing hour. Day 4, June 23rd. It's done. I can't bring myself to write the details, but Claire is gone, and I'm responsible. The thing inside me took control completely around midnight, and when I regained awareness hours later, there was nothing left of the woman I loved except scattered pieces, and the terrible satisfaction of finally feeding the hunger that had been growing inside me. I remember everything now, every moment of the transformation and what came after. My bones stretched and reformed, my teeth became fangs, my skin turned grey and leathery. I became something that belonged more to nightmare than nature. But the worst part wasn't the physical changes. It was how right it felt, how perfectly the monster's needs aligned with desires I'd been suppressing my entire life. Claire tried to run when she saw what I was becoming. She made it about 50 yards before I caught her. She begged me to fight whatever was happening, to remember who I was, to remember that I loved her. I did remember. That's what made devouring her so exquisite. Every bite was seasoned with 3 years of shared memories. Every scream reminded me of her laughter. Every tear she shed tasted like the joy she'd brought to my life. I'm human again now, at least in appearance, but the hunger hasn't been satisfied. If anything, it's grown stronger. I understand now that Claire was just the beginning, the first course in a feast that will never end. The thing that possessed me isn't gone. It's part of me now, woven into my DNA, changing me from the inside out. I'm going to walk out of these mountains and return to civilization. I'll tell everyone that Claire had a hiking accident, that I tried to save her but couldn't. They'll believe me because they'll want to, because the alternative is too horrible to consider. And then I'll wait for the hunger to build again, and I'll find someone else to love, someone else to bring to a remote place where no one will hear them scream. The monster in the mountains wasn't something I encountered. It was something I always carried inside me, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Claire helped me find it, though she never knew what gift she was giving me. I'll always be grateful to her for that, even as I search for my next meal.